Hi guys, this is Nyan. Today I have something a little bit different. I'm going to be painting 3 abstract paintings which you can paint along instead of the usual tutorials. I thought that this will be something stress-free for everyone to paint, especially during a time like this. It's just nice and relaxing to do, and you can also use these paintings as wall art or house decor as the colors are quite neutral. These are nothing new, there are heaps of similar compositions as these ones on Pinterest, but I just thought that I would make my own take, and it was so much fun and relaxing watching the paint travel and mingle with each other, and I just thought that I would share it with you. I'm going to first mist my paint to activate them so it's easier to load my brush, and I'll just list you the colors that I have on my palette here. I chose mostly neutral tones with muted hues, so the colors are Chinese white, ivory black, ultramarine deep, permanent yellow deep, sap green, sepia, burnt sienna, rose madder, burnt umber, and jaune brilliant. I'm going to start with the simplest painting. So for the first one, I want to use quite light colors. So I want to make sure that the consistencies of my paint are quite light. I first used a bit of rose madder and I just put it on my dirty palette. I intentionally want the colors to be neutral and muted. And I also want to introduce some textures since I personally like the dry brush texture along the sides of the circles. I'm just placing those shapes around different sizes and in different colors and textures, not thinking too much about it at all. I just think of it as having fun and playing with paint. So there's really no pressure, and yours doesn't have to look like mine. You can just express yourself by painting any random shapes. Doesn't even have to be circles, and you can even use any colors that you would like to. As an example here, I didn't really know what I was doing when I was painting these lines here. I just saw that the paint was still wet, so I placed some ivory black, and whatever was left I just scribbled on top of the previous circle. You can also play around with different mediums of paint. So here I'm introducing some gold from my Finetech set. I just thought that the glittery nature of the gold would break the watercolor texture and bring something interesting to the painting. I didn't end up liking the black lines and the paint was already dry, so I just wet it back up with a similar tone and added more black by tapping the colors in this time, and I quite like the texture that I made this time with it, so I ended up taking a thicker consistency of this black and added more to the circle to give it a cleaner marbled look. Then while I wait for the paint to travel and settle slightly, I picked up a black liner pen and I scribbled in some circles. You can add more than I did here, but I just want to introduce different mediums with different vibrancies and line weight, and I just thought that the fine lines complemented this painting well. Now I'm picking up some gold paint again, and I want to use this to enhance the black on the circle that I just painted, and I'm going to place it like how I placed the black before by tapping it in. Parts of the black is still a bit wet, but that's a good thing for me because I want parts of the gold to slightly bloom out. Next, I'm going to introduce another texture, so I use this watercolor pencil which has a neutral pink tone, and I'm going to scribble in a spiral and also some random markings around the area. Since I ended up liking the colored pencil texture, I also decided to use a dark brown color to draw similar scribbles with a darker tone. I think I've introduced enough textures here, so I'm going to go back to my watercolors and I'm going to just look at the layout and add circles or random brush strokes where I feel it's a bit empty. For the next painting, I'm going to create repeated ovals for the whole page in different colors and value. So for this one, I want to start by placing some colors on my palette that I can add on to. The only thing in mind when I was painting this is knowing what I want as the dominant hue, and I want it to be warm reddish browns with some cool browns or yellow browns as accent. So even though I'm painting with different hues, the colors won't clash and they will stay harmonious together. You can also try different color combinations by picking a different dominant color to see which set you like, which is what I did in the beginning before choosing my color palette. But since I want to make all of my doodles as a consistent collection, I'm keeping with the muted warm tones. As you paint the ovals, you can either pile one on top of each other vertically and horizontally, but because I didn't really measure out properly where I put the first oval, I just improvised and placed them in between each other. This is where you can get experimental with creating different colors, mixing different hues, and adding other colors to see how the paint reacts. I'm making sure that at least one oval touch so I can get the uncontrolled dispersion of paint. But if you like simpler and cleaner compositions, you can also paint the ovals apart from each other. It's just a matter of taste and what you feel like doodling at the time. I personally enjoy seeing the colors bloom and mingle with different hues and values. I find that this gives such an interesting texture that is special to watercolors, and as you can see, sometimes I even do it intentionally in order to trigger that effect. When I'm arranging the colors, though I'm not thinking about specific colors in mind, I just want to look out for whatever is surrounding it. So I do try to make sure that the surrounding color is quite different to what I'm putting down next. That way, when the paint does mingle with each other, it's very visible because either whatever is next to it has different hues or different values, which is why you see here I also like to play with the consistency, ranging from light colors to deep browns or even something close to black. You can also mix two different colors in one circle or ovals like what I'm doing here. So I started with something that was closer to the previous black color, but as I see the similarities between the two, I decided to continue with a lighter sepia brown instead of continuing with the previous color. Whenever you want to create that effect, always do this while the paint is still wet so everything blends nicely even though you have different hues combined in the same area. After I filled the page and the colors are mostly dry, I'm going to draw and paint doodles on top using different mediums. Personally, I really love how the ovals and circles look by themselves because I just love how the colors look next to each other, but I always find doodling to be really relaxing, which is why I ended up adding them in. But again, you can do whatever is comfortable for you. These are quick doodles anyway, so you can even create different variations in a short period of time if you would like to. The idea is to use these doodles as a form of relaxation, especially while we're in quarantine, so don't worry too much about the outcome, but just enjoy the process of painting and doodling. So for me, I think I'm just going to fill in most of the circles I created with markings, lines, patterns, and leaves. And they're just basically mindless doodles. And even if the lining of each circle is not clean, I think it just adds to the character of the painting in my opinion. So just have fun with this one. Spend as little or as much time as you would like. You can even create this with more of a minimalist approach, by only painting a few circles and ovals in the middle of the page instead of filling the whole page as I did here. You can basically mix and match any types of medium that you like to doodle with. I'm also going to change it up and use the mediums that I used in the previous painting just for consistency. But for this one, I thought that the composition looked a little bit heavy, so I decided to also add some white gouache to break the dark colors for some of the doodles in the darker circles. You can also use things like gold leaf or colored gouache or acrylic even if you would like to. You don't have to use watercolors even for the base if you would like, but I just like the texture it gives out, which is why I mostly paint with the medium. You can add as little or as much doodles as you would like, but I think I'm quite happy with this one since I've filled in most of the circles already, so I'm just going to move on to the next one. For the final painting, I'm going to mix my colors the way I did in the last painting, and this time I'm going to paint circles and ovals while playing with the size as well as the direction. I'm placing them randomly and I want some of the circles to touch each other in order to get the wet on wet effect as before, where the paint travels with each other. But since not all of the circles are going to be connected, you can also play around with layering if you would like to. I think that this painting in a thin consistency while layering the leaves once they dry would also create a really nice effect. I'm not going to do much layering for this now, but you can use that idea to create your own doodle if you would like to. I'm just treating mine the same as before, but because most of the circles and ovals are separate, I do think about tapping different colors in at the same time to give that abstract effect where the colors flow through each other just like before, especially since I doodled on most of the ovals previously, which covered most of the watercolor effect, so I really want to showcase that effect in this final painting. While painting this, what I want to do is fill most of the page with the circles, but I want to also leave a bit of space at the bottom because I'm going to create a main stem branching out to the circles and ovals that we just painted to make them look like leaves. Most of the paint by this time should be either still wet or slightly damp, so I'm going to take the opportunity to let the ivory black flow slowly through some of the leaves to enhance the wet on wet effect even more to create a nice transition. If you're uncomfortable with painting thin lines, you can also use a black pen or a black liner pen like what I used before if you would like to, but I like the uneven weight from the brush. I think that it looks more natural that way, so I'm just going to paint it in with a thick consistency of ivory black. After I finished connecting most of the leaves, I'm going to go back with a thin consistency paint to start layering more leaves and introduce a lighter value to fill in some of the empty spaces. And after that, I'm also going to attach the branches on those leaves as well. For these newer leaves, I'm just going to use any color to attach them in, especially if the branch is fairly short. Though I really like the strong contrast of black, sometimes adding additional lighter colors can also help loosen up the painting, so sometimes I like to slightly alternate the colors, and I'm just going to continue on until I'm happy with how the page is filled. Once I'm done, as usual, you can leave it here, but I'm going to add a little bit of pen doodles. I'm going to draw in some leaf patterns on some of the larger leaves, and I'm also going to attach smaller basic leaves around for an additional element to the painting. I really like the difference in weight and detail in the pattern used as accents, so for some of the larger leaves I really try to draw lots of thin lines to represent the veins of the leaves. I like creating them really close together to create a dense line pattern, creating a really nice contrast to the leaves in my opinion. And while doodling on the leaves, I like to always choose to draw on the lighter leaves, so the pen lines are more visible in contrast with the light base. But if you don't like this doodling part, feel free to skip it and call yours finished. As the very last finishing touch, I'm going to use the muted pink pencil again to draw in some small markings like I did in the previous paintings. I feel like this links all the doodles together somehow, making it more cohesive as a collection, and after that I'm basically going to call this one done. So here are all of the finished doodles. I hope you guys enjoyed this one. I know it's not like my usual tutorial that I post, but I just thought that this would be a fun and easy one for everyone to try out. And sometimes abstract doodles are great for relaxation, as there are no limits to what the end product can look like. So I hope you guys have fun with this one. All of the tools like brush, paper, and all the other mediums are listed in the description box below, along with my social media links. Thank you so much for watching till the end, and I'll see you at the next one. Bye!